To speak of Captain America, Brave New World 2025, is to speak of a legacy that stretches far beyond a single film. The Marvel Cinematic Universe, for over 15 years, has functioned not just as entertainment, but as a modern myth system, weaving together stories of gods, soldiers, geniuses, and spies into one cultural tapestry. Few figures have carried more symbolic weight within that tapestry than Captain America. From Steve Rogers' first steps as a scrawny Brooklyn kid transformed into the super soldier who would become the heart of the Avengers, to his closing act of returning the Infinity Stones and passing the shield on to Sam Wilson, Captain America has always stood as an emblem of ideals larger than himself. In many ways, the mantle of Captain America is less a person than a question. Who defines America's values, and what does it mean to carry them? That question is the core of Brave New World. Audiences arrive at this film not as newcomers, but as inheritors of expectation. We have already watched Sam Wilson accept Steve's shield at the end of Avengers Endgame, hesitantly at first, only to fully embrace it in The Falcon and The Winter Soldier. There, the series dramatized the struggle with whether a black man could, or even would take up the role of Captain America in a divided America. It was a story about heritage, identity, and responsibility. But where the show explored the personal and societal weight of that decision, the new film must now imagine the global consequences of it. Sam Wilson is no longer debating whether to be Captain America. He is Captain America. The question is, what kind of captain will he be in a world that no longer resembles the one Steve Rogers fought for? The title itself carries layers of resonance. Brave New World evokes Aldous Huxley's dystopian novel, a vision of society controlled by technology and hierarchy, where freedom and individuality are illusions. It also echoes Shakespeare's A Tempest, where the phrase drips with both wonder and irony. For Marvel, the phrase positions the story as one of transition and unease. This is not the Age of Heroes when Iron Man, Thor, and Cap defined unity. It is not the cosmic wars of the Infinity Saga. This is the uneasy dawn after collapse, where nations mistrust each other, powers collide, and symbols struggle to retain meaning. The Brave New World is both the hope of renewal and the dread of fragility. Into this uncertain landscape steps Sam Wilson, shield in hand, not with serum-enhanced strength, but with human willpower, moral clarity, and the courage to embody a symbol that may break under the weight of reality. At the heart of Marvel films is always the interplay between spectacle and character. Audiences will expect high-octane action sequences, political intrigue, and the grand visuals of a globe-trotting thriller. But the true anchor of Brave New World lies not in explosions but in identity. Anthony Mackie's Sam Wilson must define what kind of Captain America he will be. Unlike Steve, Sam does not have a serum. His power is not extraordinary strength, but extraordinary resolve. Unlike Tony, he does not command genius or wealth. What he embodies instead is a sense of grounded humanity, the ability to look eye to eye with the powerless and the powerful alike. This distinction matters because it reframes the role of Captain America. He is no longer a mythic soldier, but a man with wings and shield, relying on training, compassion, and belief. The film becomes an exploration of what happens when a mortal carries a mantle meant for legends. It is not only Sam's story, however. Harrison Ford enters the MCU as President Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross, a character long woven through Marvel lore, now elevated to the highest office in the world. His presence embodies the political dimension of the story. Ross is a man of power, deeply pragmatic, often authoritarian, always believing that control is preferable to chaos. His ascension to president signals that the film will be about more than physical battles. It will be about ideology, governance, and the tension between liberty and order. Placing Sam Wilson's Captain America alongside Ross's presidency sets up a clash not only of characters, but of visions for what America should be in a fractured world. We must also consider the MCU state at the time of this film. Audiences coming to brave New World after a phase of transition where new heroes, Shang-Chi, Ms. Marvel, Moon Knight, Kate Bishop, She-Hulk, have entered the frame. But the question of leadership remains unresolved. Without Iron Man, without Steve Rogers, without T'Challa, the symbolic heads of Marvel's pantheon are gone. What remains are heirs, characters who must define themselves outside the shadows of giants. In that sense, Brave New World carries enormous symbolic weight, perhaps more than any single Marvel film since Endgame. It must not only tell a story, but also reassure audiences that Marvel still has a heart, still has a symbol who can carry the narrative through years to come. Sam Wilson is not just stepping into Steve's boots. He is stepping into Marvel's future. There is also the matter of the antagonist, which early glimpses suggest may involve political destabilization, shadow organizations, and figures tied to both super soldier legacies and global threats. Tim Blake Nelson's return as a leader connects the film back to 2008's The Incredible Hulk, a reminder that Marvel's threads stretch far. The leader, with his gamma-enhanced intellect, is not a brute force villain, but a thinker, someone who uses knowledge and manipulation as his weapons. His presence in a Captain America story is thematically rich. What happens when ideology and intelligence are the tools of domination rather than fists or armies? The villain here is not just an enemy of Sam Wilson, but the very idea that symbols can unify people. The excitement around Brave New World is not merely about plot, but about cultural moment. To have a black man in the role of Captain America, leading not just allies but audiences into a new era, is significant. Representation is not tokenism here. It is central to the film's identity. Sam Wilson carrying the shield is not the same as Steve Rogers doing so. The shield means something different in his hands. It is a reclamation of symbols, an interrogation of history, a challenge to those who would prefer certain heroes to look a certain way. In the United States, where conversations around race, patriotism, and national identity are constant, this casting is not just storytelling, but commentary. The film must navigate this space delicately, neither shying away from the weight of its symbolism nor reducing it to a lecture. If handled well, it can give the film a resonance far beyond explosions and fights. Cinematically, we anticipate Ridley Scott-esque political thriller energy fused with Marvel spectacle. Julius Onah, the director, has spoken of making this installment both grounded and grand, more the Winter Soldier than Endgame, yet still connected to the wider MCU. That tonal balance matters. The Winter Soldier succeeded because it fused espionage with moral complexity, asking who defines freedom in an age of surveillance. Brave New World seeks to ask who defines leadership in an age of fragmentation. The title suggests as much. The world is not unified. The Avengers are not assembled. The trust in governments is fragile. Into this fragile world comes a man who must embody trust. The paradox is rich. How can a single man stand as a symbol when symbols themselves are questioned? This introduction, then, is not simply a scene setter, but a declaration. Captain America, Brave New World, is not just the next chapter in Marvel's endless saga. It is a test of Marvel's ability to tell stories that matter in a shifting cultural landscape, of audiences' willingness to embrace a new kind of hero, of cinema's capacity to renew myth in an era saturated with sequels and franchises. At stake is not just Sam Wilson's journey, but the soul of Marvel itself. Whether or not the film succeeds, it already carries meaning. It is a story of what comes after Legends, of how new symbols are forged, of what it means to be Captain America in a world where the old rules no longer apply. The story of Captain America, Brave New World, begins not with certainty, but with unease. The world has changed since the events of Endgame. Superheroes are scattered, governments are cautious, and the idea of the Avengers exists only in memory. Into this climate of fragility steps Sam Wilson, now officially recognized as Captain America. His shield gleams, his wings stretch across the sky, but the burden on his shoulders is not light. As the film opens, we see him engaged not in triumph, but negotiation, acting as both soldier and diplomat. He is no longer just a fighter. He is a figure expected to represent an ideal in a time when ideals themselves feel unstable. His journey intersects with global politics almost immediately. The election of President Thaddeus Ross, a man whose history with superhumans has always been one of control and mistrust, signals the beginning of tension. Ross views the presence of enhanced individuals as both a threat and a tool, something to be managed, restrained, and weaponized when convenient. His presidency comes at a time when new alliances and old enemies resurface. Nations fear instability. Rogue factions test boundaries, and whispers of shadow experiments begin to ripple across intelligence channels. For Sam, this is a different kind of battlefield. No clear enemy to strike, no Hydra to dismantle. Instead, a series of political and ideological landmines where every move could reshape the perception of Captain America's role. Amid this uncertainty emerges a figure of the leader, Samuel Stearns, a mind altered long ago by gamma radiation. Once a mere scientist, now a figure of heightened intellect, Stearns reemerges after years in the shadows. His mutation did not leave him monstrous in body, but terrifying in thought. He sees the world's fractures not as crises, but as opportunities, moments to reshape order according to his designs. Unlike villains who seek raw domination, the leader's ambition is subtler and more insidious. He infiltrates through ideas, through influence, through the weaponization of knowledge. Where Steve Rogers once battled soldiers on fields, Sam Wilson must battle schemes woven into the very structures of society. The plot moves between global set pieces and intimate dilemmas. Early scenes take us across borders, to desert strongholds, urban centers, and secret labs hidden in forgotten landscapes. Each new location reveals a piece of a puzzle. Experiments designed to recreate or surpass the super soldier serum, alliances between corrupt officials and shadow organizations, the quiet but persistent rise of factions who see chaos as profit. Through it all, Sam remains at the center, navigating both skies and strategy rooms. His role as Captain America demands not just physical endurance, but moral clarity. Even when every path seems compromised, the weight of legacy is woven into nearly every scene. Sam speaks often with allies who question whether symbols can survive in cynical times. Danny Ramirez's Joaquin Torres, stepping into the mantle of Falcon, represents a new generation of heroes, eager yet uncertain, carrying both admiration for Sam and doubts about their collective place in the world. Their partnership is central to the story, a dynamic of mentor and protege, but also of equals who must learn from one another. Joaquin's presence reminds Sam that the future of heroism is not about one man with a shield, but about continuity and cooperation. The return of familiar faces deepens the emotional texture. Liv Tyler's Betty Ross finds herself caught between her father, now president, and the moral questions raised by his policies. Her presence humanizes Ross, showing him not only as an authority figure, but as a father with vulnerabilities and contradictions. Yet his vision for America remains one of control, order maintained by power, trust secured through surveillance and dominance. For Sam, working alongside Ross means walking a line between cooperation and confrontation. Ross is not a clear villain, but neither is he an ally who trusts freely. Their exchanges crackle with tension, the shield often resting silently on Sam's arm as a reminder of who he represents and why he cannot compromise. The central conflict builds as the leader's schemes become clearer. He has not merely returned to exact revenge, but to reshape the political map. His intellect allows him to manipulate systems, financial, technological, governmental, in ways that destabilize entire nations without a single bomb. It is here the film leans into thriller territory. Attacks are not always physical but ideological. Public opinion is turned, government are pressured, and Sam finds himself painted in the media as a divisive figure. The shield, once a universally admired emblem, becomes contested. For some, it is still a sign of hope. For others, it is an outdated relic wielded by the wrong man. The battles themselves are staged with Marvel's trademark scale, but carry a new emotional gravity. One fight in a crumbling urban square pits Sam against mercenaries enhanced by experimental serums, their raw power overwhelming compared to his human limits. Watching him struggle, improvising with shield throws, aerial maneuvers, and sheer determination drives home the film's central truth. He is not invincible. Every victory costs him energy. Every fall could be his last. Yet this fragility makes his perseverance inspiring. Where Steve fought with superhuman durability, Sam fights with resilience that feels painfully, powerfully human. The climax emerges as the leader's plan coalesces, a bid not for conquest in the traditional sense, but for control through influence. He seeks to ignite distrust between nations, to fracture the fragile alliances that keep chaos at bay. His weapon is not an army, but knowledge twisted into propaganda, truths bent into manipulations. In a final confrontation, Sam must not only battle the leader physically, but also symbolically, reclaiming the shield's meaning before a watching world. Their battle is staged in a setting that echoes both history and modernity, a grand arena of politics and power, where every move resonates far beyond fists and strikes. Yet the resolution is not simple triumph. The leader is defeated, but his influence lingers. Ross remains in power, his authority both stabilized and questioned. The world is not saved so much as nudged away from collapse, fragile as ever. For Sam, victory is not about ending threats, but about showing what it means to stand firm in uncertainty. The film closes not on a note of certainty, but on endurance. Sam Wilson, battered but unbowed, walking forward with shield in hand, aware that his fight will never truly end. The summary of Brave New World is thus a story of transition, of fragile victories, of symbols contested and reclaimed. It is less about the neat defeat of evil than about the resilience of ideals. By the end, audiences are left not with closure, but with a sense of continuity. Sam Wilson has proven that he can carry the shield, not because he is invincible, but because he is willing to fight even when victory is uncertain. That willingness is what makes him Captain America. At the heart of Captain America, Brave New World lies not just a sequence of events, but constellation of characters whose choices, contradictions, and ideals embody the film's themes. More than any other Marvel entry since The Winter Soldier, this film relies on the tension between personalities and principles. Each figure is not merely a participant in action sequences, but a lens through which questions of power, identity, and morality are examined. Sam Wilson stands at the center, not only as the new Captain America, but as an embodiment of what it means to redefine legacy. Anthony Mackie carries into this role not the mythic aura that Chris Evans embodied, but something subtler and arguably more resonant: humanity. Unlike Steve Rogers, Sam is not enhanced. His bones can break, his body can falter, his strength is not superhuman. Yet this lack of augmentation makes his decisions weightier. Each fight he enters, each shield he raises, is a choice rather than a foregone certainty. In him, the mantle of Captain America is reimagined, not as a natural outgrowth of serum and destiny, but as a deliberate embrace of responsibility. This human vulnerability, paired with unwavering conviction, reframes the very idea of heroism. What makes Sam powerful is not that he cannot fall, but that he rises each time he does. His arc in the film is one of negotiation between symbol and self. In The Falcon and The Winter Soldier, we saw him wrestle with whether he should take up the shield at all. In Brave New World, that question is replaced with a harder one. Having accepted the role, how does he live it authentically? For some, he will never be Steve Rogers. For others, he will never be the captain they wanted. In moments of quiet dialogue and moments of desperate combat, Sam must confront that the shield as both a weapon and a mirror. It reflects back not only the ideals of its bearer, but also the biases of those who gaze upon it. By the end of the story, his arc demonstrates that being Captain America is not about living up to one man's legacy, but about redefining the mantle for the present. He does not imitate Steve. He builds upon him. President Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross, played now by Harrison Ford, operates as both foil and uneasy ally. Ross has always represented the face of authority in the MCU, a man deeply skeptical of unchecked superhuman power. As president, his pragmatism sharpens into something more severe, the belief that control is the only path to stability. His character is not painted in black and white. He is not a mustache-whirling villain, but a man whose fears and convictions drive him toward authoritarian instincts. To him, Sam Wilson's Captain America is both an asset and a problem. He is useful as a symbol of national pride, but dangerous as an independent actor unwilling to bend fully to governmental will. The Ross-Sam dynamic forms one of the film's richest veins. Their conversations are charged not with overt hostility, but with philosophical sparring. Ross embodies the politics of order. Sam embodies the ethics of principle. Their uneasy partnership shows that leadership in fractured times is not about perfect unity, but about contested visions grinding against one another. Where Ross represents authority, Samuel Stearns, the leader, represents subversion. Reintroduced after a long absence, Tim Blake Nelson plays him with precision that underscores the menace of intellect. The leader is not a brute force opponent, but a figure of manipulation. His mutation, gifting him genius-level intellect, makes him dangerous in ways fists cannot match. He thrives not on physical domination, but on ideological infection, the ability to destabilize trust, spread disinformation, and bend systems to his will. He is the villain who wages war not on bodies, but on minds. His presence in the film makes sense because he challenges the very essence of Captain America as a symbol. If Sam represents unity through ideals, the leader represents fracture through manipulation. Every scheme he enacts is designed to undermine belief in symbols themselves. In this way, he is perhaps the perfect antagonist for Sam's first cinematic test as Captain America. Where Steve Rogers once fought Red Skull's fascist clarity, Sam Wilson now faces Stearns' intellectual chaos. The supporting cast adds emotional depth and generational resonance. Danny Ramirez's Joaquin Torres is not only Sam's partner in flight, but also a reflection of legacy's continuation. If Sam embodies the burden of inheriting a mantle, Joaquin represents the energy of those just stepping into theirs. His eagerness, sometimes clashing with Sam's cautious wisdom, creates a moment of friction and growth. Together, they form a dynamic akin to older and younger brothers, each teaching the other. Joaquin's presence ensures that Sam is not isolated, reminding audiences that Captain America is never just one man, but part of a network of allies willing to stand alongside him. Betty Ross, portrayed once again by Liv Tyler, brings nuance to the political landscape. Her relationship with her father complicates the image of Ross as an authoritarian leader. Through her, we glimpse the personal vulnerabilities behind his rigid worldview. At the same time, Betty herself embodies compassion, intellect, and resilience. She becomes a voice of reason amid escalating tensions, someone who both connects and challenges Sam's perspective. Her presence underscores that the story is not merely about men with power, but about families, legacies, and the personal costs of political decisions. The ensemble expands with figures such as Shira Haas's Sabra and Giancarlo Esposito's undisclosed role, adding layers of intrigue and global dimension. These characters push the narrative beyond American borders, reinforcing the title's promise of a brave new world. Each represents different factions, different ideologies, different stakes, reminding Sam that Captain America cannot simply stand for one nation anymore. In an interconnected world, the shield casts a shadow far larger than one flag. Together, the characters create a network of tension and resonance. Sam Wilson's journey is not one of solitary heroism, but of constant negotiation, with presidents, with villains, with protégés, with allies. Each character embodies a force that challenges or affirms him. Ross as pragmatic authority, the leader as corrosive intellect, Joaquin as hopeful successor, Betty as moral bridge. The interplay between them ensures that the story is never static, never reducible to good versus evil. Instead, it becomes a meditation on fragility of ideals when tested by politics, manipulation, and human flaws. In the end, the strength of Captain America, Brave New World, rests in how these characters reflect and refract one another. None exists in isolation. Each conversation, each battle, each alliance is charged with symbolic weight. The film does not present Sam as flawless nor his opponents as wholly villainous. Instead, it paints a picture of a world where choices matter precisely because clarity is rare. Through these characters, the film insists that what defines a hero is not perfection but persistence, not invincibility, but the willingness to endure criticism, carry responsibility, and remain human even when burdened with impossible expectations. The fabric of Captain America, Brave New World, is woven not only from battles and politics, but from a dense web of themes and motifs that echo across Marvel's history and resonate within contemporary culture. At its heart, the film interrogates the meaning of legacy, the fragility of symbols, the balance between freedom and control, and the weight of leadership in times of uncertainty. Each motif is not an accessory to the plot, but its engine, shaping the characters' choices and the story's emotional power. The most prominent theme is that of legacy. From the moment Sam Wilson holds a shield, he carries not only vibranium but history. The shield has always been more than a weapon. It is a narrative device, a symbol whose meaning shifts depending on who wields it. For Steve Rogers, it represented resilience, idealism, and the strength of moral conviction against overwhelming odds. For Sam Wilson, the meaning evolves. His legacy is not built upon the serum or the myth of perfection, but upon humanity itself. By taking the shield, he does not erase Steve's legacy but reframes it, showing that ideals are not the possession of a single man, but the inheritance of all who dare to embody them. The motif of passing the torch, from Steve to Sam, and from Sam to the next generation represented by Joaquin Torres, creates a rhythm throughout the film, suggesting that legacies are not monuments but living responsibilities. Intertwined with legacy is the theme of identity. Sam is not Steve Rogers, and the film insists that he should not be. In a world where comparisons are inevitable, the motif of individuality versus imitation surfaces again and again. Sam's fights are more brutal because he lacks superhuman durability. His decisions weigh heavier because he lacks political immunity. His Captain America is not one defined by myth, but by authenticity. This theme resonates powerfully in a cultural moment where representation matters. The sight of a black man holding the shield is itself a redefinition of identity, a challenge to audiences to rethink what symbols mean when carried by different bodies, voices, and perspectives. Another motif that threads through the story is the question of freedom versus control. This has been a recurring tension in Marvel's political thrillers, from the Winter Soldier surveillance state to Civil War's Sokovia Accords. In Brave New World, that motif resurfaces in the clash between Sam Wilson and President Ross. Ross represents control, the belief that order must be maintained at any cost, even if it means restricting liberty. Sam represents freedom, not chaos, but the conviction that ideals lose their meaning if they are compromised by authoritarian instincts. The film uses their relationship to dramatize a timeless question. Is safety worth sacrificing freedom? And who has the authority to decide? The leader, as antagonist, embodies a motif of knowledge corrupted. His power is not muscle but intellect, yet it is intellect turned toward manipulation. This creates a counterpoint to Sam's shield. Where the shield stands for transparency, resilience, and defense, the leader's schemes represent distortion, fragility, and exploitation. Knowledge, in his hands, becomes a weapon of chaos. This opposition reinforces the theme that symbols are always vulnerable to being twisted. The motif of truth versus manipulation runs throughout the film, reminding audiences that in modern times, battles are fought not only on battlefields but also in the realm of perception. The shield itself continues to serve as a film's central motif, perhaps even more complexly than in any prior entry. In Steve's era, it was a largely uncontested emblem of virtue. In Sam's hands, it is polarizing. Some see it as hope. Others question whether it belongs to him at all. Its circular form, unbroken yet constantly in motion, mirrors the cycles of history and the ongoing contest of ideals. Its presence in every battlegrounds of film, a reminder that no matter the political storms or intellectual manipulations, the fight is always about what that shield means. Fragility is another subtle theme that runs through the story. Unlike Steve, Sam is vulnerable. His body bears scars, his energy waned, his victories are costly. This fragility is not weakness, but narrative richness. It forces audiences to feel the stakes of his battles, to see him as a man who could fall. Fragility extends beyond Sam to the world itself. The global order is fragile. Alliances are fragile. Even symbols themselves seem on the brink of collapse. This fragility heightens the drama, suggesting that heroism is not about erasing fragility, but about standing firm in spite of it. The motif of mirrors and reflections adds a visual and thematic layer. Sam's journey is framed against Ross's presidency. Two men carrying different visions of leadership, reflecting one another's flaws and convictions. The leader functions as a distorted mirror of Sam's ideals. Where Sam uses humanity to unify, Stearns uses his intellect to divide. Joaquin mirrors Sam's earlier struggles, embodying the uncertainty of carrying a mantle not fully understood. These mirrored relationships deepen the narrative, creating an intricate web of contrasts that force each character to define themselves more clearly. Underlying everything is the theme of resilience. Marvel films have often celebrated spectacle, but Brave New World celebrates persistence. Sam does not win because he is the strongest or smartest, but because he refuses to surrender to cynicism. His resilience embodies the idea that in a world fractured by mistrust and manipulation, the true hero is not the invincible one, but the one who endures. The title itself, Brave New World, encapsulates the film's thematic core. It speaks to uncertainty, to transition, to the uneasy dawn of a new era. It is not a declaration of triumph, but an acknowledgement of risk. The world is brave because it is fragile, new because it is uncharted, a world where symbols are contested and legacies are redefined. The film leans into that ambiguity, refusing to offer easy answers, reminding audiences that heroism is not about erasing conflict, but about navigating it. Ultimately, the themes and motifs of Captain America, Brave New World, transform it into more than a superhero film. It becomes meditation on what it means to lead when leadership itself is distrusted, what it means to symbolize unity when unity feels impossible, and what it means to carry a legacy that is both a burden and a gift. These deeper currents ensure that the film resonates not only as action spectacle but as cultural reflection, inviting audiences to see themselves in its struggles and reconsider what bravery means in our own fractured world. The power of Captain America, Brave New World, is not only carried by its themes and performances, but by the cinematic techniques that shape how audiences experience those elements. Marvel films are often critiqued for their reliance on formulaic spectacle, yet here the stylistic choices strive to deepen resonance rather than overshadow it. From a framing of shots to the use of sound, every element is deployed to emphasize fragility, resilience, and ideological tension. The visual language of the film leans heavily on contrast. Scenes of political dialogue are often framed in symmetrical, controlled compositions, emphasizing the rigid order that Ross seeks to impose. His offices, halls of power, and press conferences are captured with static shots, the camera locked in place, echoing the rigidity of his worldview. In stark contrast, the scenes that follow Sam are dynamic, filled with fluid tracking shots and sweeping aerial cinematography. When he soars, the camera soars with him, creating not just spectacle but a visceral sense of freedom. The juxtaposition between static and fluid imagery underscores the clash between order and liberty that defines the story. Color grading becomes another expressive tool. The palette shift between muted, cold tones in government spaces and rich, warmer hues in scenes that highlight Sam's humanity. The skies he glides through are bathed in blues and golds, suggesting openness and possibility. The laboratories of the leader, by contrast, are sickly green, a visual echo of gamma mutation, but also a corruption and distortion. This deliberate color coding ensures that viewers subconsciously read each space as embodying philosophy. Blue skies for hope, gray offices for control, green shadows for manipulation. Lighting plays a similarly symbolic role. The shield itself often becomes a reflective surface that catches the light in key moments. In battles, it gleams not just as metal but as an icon, sometimes blindingly bright, other times shadowed and contested. Close-ups of the shield resting beside Sam emphasize its dual role as weapon and burden. Meanwhile, the leader's spaces are lit with harsh contrasts, shadows looming across his elongated forehead and piercing eyes, highlighting his role as a thinker cloaked in darkness. Ross's settings, meanwhile, are brightly lit but sterile, reinforcing the emptiness behind his calls for order. The action sequences are choreographed with a deliberate emphasis on vulnerability. Unlike Steve Rogers, Sam cannot rely on brute strength. The cinematography reflects this by frequently placing the audience inside his perspective. When he is struck down, the camera jolts with him, When he scrambles back to his feet, the angles tighten, intensifying the sense of effort. Aerial combat sequences, long a hallmark of the Falcon's fighting style, are shot with sweeping drone-like movements, mimicking the fluidity of flight and immersing the audience in its perspective. Yet these are balanced with grounded hand-to-hand skirmishes where the limitations of his humanity are starkly clear. The editing favors longer takes in these fights, avoiding rapid cuts, to highlight just how much physical effort every movement requires. Sound design amplifies these contrasts. The roar of wings slicing through air is sharp and tactile, emphasizing speed and agility. The shield's clang as it ricochets off walls or collides with enemies reverberates with weight, reminding audiences of its indestructible nature. By contrast, the leader's influence is often accompanied by subtler auditory cues, whispers, overlapping voices, distorted frequencies that unsettle rather than overwhelm. Ross's scenes, meanwhile, are underscored by the crispness of microphones, camera shutters, and bureaucratic chatter, grounding his authority in mundane yet oppressive sounds. Music functions as an emotional guide, blending continuity with innovation. The echoes of Alan Silvestri's classic Captain America theme surface at key moments, but reorchestrated in ways that reflect Sam's identity. Brass swells that once accompanied Steve's charge are softened or shifted into minor keys, suggesting a mantle not inherited wholesale but reinterpreted. New motifs are introduced, soaring strings and percussion that accompany Sam's flight sequences, as well as eerie, atonal textures underscoring the leader's presence. These musical choices ensure that the film feels both connected to Marvel's legacy and uniquely tied to Sam's journey. Editing rhythms are carefully tuned to narrative purpose. Political discussions unfold with slower pacing, allowing tension to simmer through dialogue and silence. By contrast, action sequences accelerate into rapid cuts, though never at the expense of clarity. The transitions between these modes are often abrupt, emphasizing the jarring shifts Sam himself must endure, one moment negotiating with presidents, the next fighting enhanced mercenaries in collapsing streets. This oscillation becomes a structural motif, reinforcing the film's central theme of fragility in uncertain times. Symbolism is enhanced by recurring visual motifs. Reflections in glass are used to highlight duplicity, particularly in Ross's scenes, where his image often appears doubled or distorted, suggesting the gulf between his public face and private intent. The leader's intellectual dominance is represented visually through networks of screens and holograms, a modern hall of mirrors in which truth is impossible to discern. Sam's shield, by contrast, is often framed in isolation, placed at the center of shots, a focal point of both admiration and contestation. The climactic confrontation employs cinematic language to elevate its stakes beyond the physical. As Sam battles a leader, the setting itself becomes a metaphor, a vast chamber of political power, filled with screens broadcasting manipulated narratives to a global audience. The camera alternates between wide shots that emphasize the scale of influence and tight close-ups that capture the intimate desperation of Sam's fight. The editing intercuts between combat and broadcasts, reminding viewers that the true battle is not just fists against intellect, but perception against distortion. In the resolution, cinematic techniques slow down, almost meditative. The camera lingers on Sam as he walks forward, shield in hand, battered yet resolute. The silence in these moments is powerful, broken only by the faint sound of footsteps and distant echoes. Where earlier sequences overwhelmed with sound and spectacle, the closing moments strip down to simplicity, emphasizing endurance over triumph. Taken together, the cinematic techniques of Captain America, Brave New World elevated beyond the formula of superhero spectacle. Every choice, from framing and color to sound and editing, serves to reinforce the film's central ideas. Sam Wilson's Captain America is not invincible, and the film refuses to make him appear so. Instead, it highlights fragility, authenticity, and resilience, using cinematic language to invite audiences not merely to watch, but to feel the burden of carrying ideals in a fractured world. Symbols carry the weight of history, and in Captain America, Brave New World, they are not merely decorative elements, but living forces that shape how the story is seen, felt, and understood. Every image in this film is charged with meaning, often operating on multiple levels: literal, cultural, political, and emotional. Marvel has always leaned on iconic imagery, but in this film, the The symbolism is heightened, becoming the very language through which its themes are conveyed. The shield remains the most powerful symbol in the film, and its presence is deliberately layered. Once the unmistakable emblem of Steve Rogers, it now occupies a contested space in public perception. For some, it remains the enduring sign of American resilience and moral clarity. For others, it feels outdated or misplaced in Sam's hands. The film visually emphasizes this tension through how the shield is framed. When Sam wields it in moments of triumph, it gleams brightly, catching sunlight as it projects hope outward. In moments of doubt, however, the shield appears heavy, resting against walls or Sam's own body, as though it carries the weight of judgment. Its circular form, perfect and unbroken, symbolizes continuity, but the scratches and dents accumulated remind us that continuity does not mean perfection. It means endurance. Complementing the shield are Sam's wings, another visual motif that symbolizes freedom and innovation. Unlike the shield, which is inherited, the wings are uniquely his. Together, they balance tradition and individuality, past and present. In battle sequences, the imagery of flight is framed against open skies, turning Sam into a literal emblem of liberation. The wings extend the symbolism of Captain America into a new dimension, suggesting that symbols must adapt to remain relevant. Their dual function, defensive shield extensions and offensive strikes, visually represent Sam's flexibility, the balance of protection and action, compassion and strength. Mirrors and reflections are another recurring motif that deepen the story's symbolism. The film often frames Ross in reflective surfaces, glass windows, polished tables, even a metallic gleam of the shield during tense negotiations. These reflections hint at duplicity and fractured identity, portraying Ross as a man whose public image diverges from private convictions. For Sam, mirrors are less about duplicity and more about legacy. In several scenes, his image reflected in the shield suggests the ongoing tension between who he is and who the world wants him to be. These visual echoes remind audiences that identity is never static, but constantly negotiated. Color itself becomes symbolic language throughout the film. Government spaces, dominated by Ross, are framed in cold, sterile grays and whites, visual shorthand for control and rigidity. The leader's environments are bathed in sickly greens, not only evoking gamma radiation, but signaling corruption, intellectual distortion, and unnatural growth. In contrast, Sam's moment of clarity and triumph are surrounded by vibrant blues and golds, the colors of open sky and sunlight. This palette associates him with transparency and optimism. The use of red, particularly in moments of conflict, carries dual meaning, both violence and sacrifice. Together, these colors create a symbolic map of ideologies, where each hue signals not just mood but philosophy. The recurring motif of flight extends beyond Sam's wings to the very structure of the film. Flight becomes a metaphor for freedom, vision, and the ability to rise above constraints. Aerial sequences are not just thrilling action, but metaphors for perspective, for seeing beyond the narrow confines of politics and manipulation. When Sam soars, audiences are invited to imagine possibilities beyond what is constrained on the ground. Conversely, when he is forced into close-quarters combat, stripped of altitude, the imagery emphasizes his vulnerability, his humanity tethered to earth. This duality reinforces the film's insistence that true heroism lies in navigating both heights and depths. The leader introduces a very different kind of imagery. His environment is filled with networks of screens, cables, and holograms, constructing visual motifs of webs and mazes. This imagery suggests entrapment, manipulation, and the overwhelming spread of information. His elongated forehead and piercing eyes are themselves grotesque symbols of intellect warped beyond humanity. Through him, knowledge is visually recoded not as enlightenment but as suffocation. His layers resemble modern temples of data, where truth is drowned beneath waves of information. This imagery aligns perfectly with his role as antagonist. Not brute force, but chaos through knowledge. Symbols of fragility also appear throughout the film. Cracked glass, collapsing structures, broken machinery. These recurring visuals remind the audience that the world Sam seeks to defend is precarious. In one striking moment, the shield itself is shown resting atop rubble, as if to suggest that symbols are only as enduring as the ideals behind them. Fragility is not portrayed as defeat but as reality, a motif that grounds the film's stakes in something profoundly human. Hands are another subtle but powerful motif. Shots linger on Sam gripping the shield, passing it, raising it again after being struck down. Hands clasp in alliances and recoil in betrayal. The leader's hands hover over keyboards and control panels, orchestrating chaos without ever entering the battlefield. Ross's hands rest firmly on podiums, gripping authority through rhetoric rather than action. These repeated images suggest that the true battleground lies not only in combat, but in the choices individuals make with their hands. To create, to destroy, to control, to defend. The film also employs imagery of thresholds and borders. Doorways, gates, and lines of demarcation appear in visual framing, emphasizing the constant negotiation between one world and another. Sam is repeatedly shown standing in liminal spaces, between governments, between ideologies, between allies and enemies. This threshold imagery symbolizes the transitional nature of his Captain America, caught between past and future, between certainty and ambiguity. It echoes the film's title, Brave New World, by situating Sam as a figure who must navigate uncharted boundaries. Even silence becomes symbolic. In key moments, the absence of music or dialogue is used to emphasize the weight of decision. When Sam stares at the shield in solitude, the lack of sound becomes an auditory symbol of responsibility's burden. When Ross delivers a speech, the silence before applause highlights not approval but hesitation. Silence here is not emptiness but meaning, a reminder that absence can speak louder than presence. Together, these layers of symbolism and imagery elevate Brave New World beyond its surface as a superhero film. The shield, wings, colors, mirrors, fragility, hands, thresholds, and silence form symbolic tapestry that deepens a narrative. Each image reinforces the themes of legacy, identity, control, and resilience. The film's true power lies not just in what characters say or do, but in how symbols speak for them, silently shaping how audiences interpret every action. In the end, Captain America, Brave New World is less about defeating an enemy than about redefining symbols. The shield does not remain unchanged. It becomes renewed through Sam's struggle. The wings expand the symbol of Captain America into something more expansive. The imagery of fragility insists that ideals are never invulnerable, only enduring when constantly fought for. Through its use of symbolism and imagery, the film invites audiences to reflect not just on a story but on the meaning of symbols in their own lives, what they inherit, what they redefine, and what they choose to carry forward. The success of Captain America, Brave New World rests not only on its writing and imagery, but on the weight and nuance of its performances. At the center stands Anthony Mackie, who delivers his most layered portrayal yet as Sam Wilson. His Captain America is not a seamless continuation of Steve Rogers, but a deeply personal reinvention. Mackie embodies the tension of a man who feels a burden of expectation, yet refuses to collapse beneath it. His physicality communicates vulnerability as much as strength. In fight sequences, he staggers, he bleeds, he exhales with exhaustion, small details that make every movement feel earned. Yet it is in the quieter moments that Mackie truly excels. The way he looks at the shield when alone, with eyes that flicker between pride and doubt, conveys volumes without a single word. His Sam Wilson is not an ideal carved in stone, but a man in motion, constantly negotiating what it means to embody a symbol larger than himself. Mackie's performance ensures that audiences never forget his humanity, and it is precisely that humanity that makes his Captain America resonate. Opposite him, Harrison Ford steps into the Marvel Universe with gravitas as President Thaddeus Ross. Known for his trademark blend of authority and weariness, Ford uses his age and presence to craft a Ross who is both commanding and brittle. He does not play Ross as a caricature of authoritarianism, but as a man convinced of his own necessity. In press conferences, his voice booms with controlled confidence. Yet in private moments with Betty, a softer vulnerability cracks through. Ford allows Ross to be a figure of contradiction, a leader who inspires loyalty through fear, but whose motivations are grounded in a belief, however misguided, that he is preserving order. The subtle tremors in his delivery, the restrained frustration in his body language, lend authenticity to a role that might otherwise have veered into simplicity. His presence elevates every scene, grounding the political stakes in lived authority. Tim Blake Nelson as Samuel Stearns, now fully realized as a leader, offers performance a controlled menace. Nelson avoids the temptation to play his enhanced intellect as manic or unhinged. Instead, he chooses precision. His speech patterns are deliberate, his intonations calm, his eyes piercing with a confidence that unnerves. This restraint makes him more terrifying, as if he sees a dozen steps ahead while everyone else struggles to keep up. Nelson's physical transformation, marked by the elongated forehead, could easily have become cartoonish, but his gravitas anchors it. He leans into stillness, making his moments of sudden intensity feel like ruptures in carefully maintained control. His leader is less a supervillain than a philosopher king gone astray, and Nelson's performance makes his presence linger even when he is off-screen. Danny Ramirez, stepping into the role of Joaquin Torres as the new Falcon, delivers youthful energy and sincerity. His chemistry with Mackie is natural, a blend of admiration, camaraderie, and occasional friction. Ramirez captures the spirit of a younger hero still finding his place, mirroring Sam's own earlier struggles as Falcon. His performance adds warmth to the film, particularly in moments where humor softens the heaviness of the plot. Yet Ramirez is not reduced to comic relief. His portrayal gives Torres depth, particularly when he grapples with the risks of stepping into a legacy. The earnestness in his eyes when he dons his own wings tells a story of inheritance and continuation, without the need for grand speeches. Liv Tyler, returning as Betty Ross, offers performance that balances nostalgia with new relevance. She embodies Betty not just as a daughter, but as a moral compass caught between her father's authority and her own conscience. Tyler plays her with quiet strength, her tone often gentle but resolute. In moments of conflict with Ross, her eyes communicate both affection and disappointment, creating emotional depth in a character that could easily have been sidelined. Tyler's chemistry with Ford adds complexity to Ross's characterization, grounding his decisions in human stakes. Her presence also ties the film back to the Incredible Hulk, creating continuity while reasserting Betty as more than a peripheral figure. Shira Haas as Sabra adds another layer of complexity. Her performance radiates determination, portraying Sabra as both an operative and a symbol of national identity. Haas delivers lines with crisp confidence, her posture exuding control. Yet she allows glimpses of vulnerability, moments when the burden of representing more than just herself weighs heavily. Her scenes with Mackie create dynamic contrasts. Two figures carrying symbols of nations, both questioning how to balance allegiance with humanity. Haas's performance avoids cliché, instead offering a nuanced portrayal that challenges audiences to see beyond labels. Supporting performances flesh out the world with authenticity. Each minor character, whether government official, mercenary, or civilian, is played with grounded realism that prevents the film from slipping into pure fantasy. The casting as a whole leans toward actors who can embody ideological positions without reducing them to stereotypes. This ensures that the film feels populated by real people, not just archetypes. Together, these performances weave a tapestry of conviction, doubt, strength, and fragility. Mackie anchors a film with authenticity. Ford embodies authority and contradiction. Nelson injects menace through intellect. Ramirez offers youthful sincerity. Tyler grounds the narrative with heart, and Haas adds sharp ideological contrast. The interplay between them creates a dynamic rhythm, with each actor reflecting and refracting the film's themes. The result is a film where performances do not merely deliver dialogue, but embody meaning. Every glance, every hesitation, every clash of tone adds to the layers of legacy, identity, and fragility that define the story. Without such performances, the shield will remain a prop, the wings mere spectacle, and the politics empty rhetoric. With them, the film transcends spectacle, becoming a meditation on humanity, carried by actors who breathe life into symbols. The mark of a director is not always found in the loudest spectacles, but in the subtle choices that shape tone, rhythm, and meaning. With Captain America, Brave New World, Julius Onah steps into a franchise heavy with expectation. He is tasked with carrying forward the legacy of Steve Rogers, establishing Sam Wilson as the new Captain America, and simultaneously redefining what the shield means in a fractured cinematic and cultural landscape. His vision is not simply continue, but to reframe, to take familiar elements and present them in a way that feels urgent, grounded, and relevant to the contemporary moment. Onah approaches his film with a sense of realism that distinguishes it from other Marvel entries. The action is there, yes, but it is not action for its own sake. Instead, every sequence feels motivated by character and theme. This is particularly evident in how he frames Sam Wilson. Rather than amplifying him into an untouchable icon, Onah emphasizes his humanity. He does not shy away from showing Sam's limitations, his exhaustion, his vulnerability, his reliance on ingenuity rather than brute strength. This directorial choice reframes Captain America not as a super soldier myth, but as a deeply human figure carrying ideals through sheer willpower. By doing so, Onah bridges a gap between superhero spectacle and intimate character study. One of Onah's most notable contributions is his insistence on political immediacy. The Winter Soldier redefined Marvel's tone by bringing espionage and surveillance politics into its core. Onah builds upon that but situates it in a world grappling with misinformation, authoritarianism, and ideological polarization. His vision does not present Ross as a flat antagonist, but as a figure who embodies contemporary anxieties about control, safety, and power. Onah directs Harrison Ford with an eye toward complexity, framing him as a man who believes he is the last defense against chaos, even if his methods are corrosive. This directorial nuance makes the political stakes of the film feel not only Marvel-sized but eerily reflective of today's headlines. Visually, Onah leans on contrasts that reflect ideological divides. Governmental and military spaces are depicted with rigid symmetry, polished surfaces, and controlled lighting, images that convey order but also sterility. In contrast, Sam's flight sequences are captured with fluid, soaring camera movements, immersing audiences in freedom of perspective. Onah uses these visual languages as narrative tools, ensuring that even without dialogue, viewers understand the clash of philosophies embedded in the story. His direction makes the camera an active participant, not a passive observer, aligning imagery with the heartbeat of the narrative. What distinguishes Onah further is his use of silence and restraint. Many Marvel films overwhelm with constant soundtracks and quips, but Onah allows moments to breathe. When Sam contemplates the shield in solitude, Onah lets the silence stretch, forcing the audience to sit with the weight of legacy. When political conversations unfold, pauses are allowed to linger, making tension more palpable than any explosion. This restraint reflects Onah's confidence in his actors and his narrative, trusting that meaning can emerge not only from spectacle but from absence. Another element of Onah's directorial vision is his handling of the leader, a character with a potentially absurd visual design. Samuel Stearns could easily have tipped into parody. Onah avoids this by grounding him in atmosphere and menace. He frames Stearns with calculated stillness, surrounding him with technological imagery that feels oppressive. By emphasizing Nelson's performance and ensuring that the leader's power is conveyed through intellect and manipulation rather than physicality, Onah makes him a villain distinct from Marvel's usual lineup. This choice reflects Onah's broader goal: to create conflict not simply through fists but through ideas, forcing Captain America into battles of philosophy as much as combat. Onah's vision also extends to representation. He directs Anthony Mackie not as Steve Rogers' replacement, but as a hero who stands on his own terms. The camera often lingers on Mackie's expressions, making his inner conflict as important as his external battles. Onah ensures that Sam's black identity is not an afterthought, but an integral part of the story. This is not achieved through heavy-handed statements, but through framing, dialogue, and interactions that highlight the challenges of being a symbol in a divided world. His direction makes Sam's Captain America resonate with authenticity, reminding audiences that representation is most powerful when it is organically woven into character and story. The pacing of the film also bears Onah's signature. He alternates between slow-burn political dialogue and kinetic action, refusing to let either dominate. This balance mirrors the duality of Sam's journey: statesman and soldier, negotiator and fighter. Onah directs the transitions with intention, ensuring that audiences feel the jarring reality of a man who must shift between diplomacy and battle in the span of moments. The film's rhythm reflects this instability, a deliberate choice that underscores the fragility of Sam's world. In terms of tone, Onah leans into seriousness, avoiding the over-humor that often characterizes Marvel. Humor exists mostly through Joaquin Torres' youthful presence, but it never undercuts tension. Instead, it arises naturally from character dynamics. Onah's refusal to dilute dramatic stakes with excessive levity allows the film to maintain gravity. This tonal discipline makes Brave New World feel less like a standard Marvel entry and more like a political thriller infused with superhero iconography. Ultimately, Julius Onah's directorial vision transforms Captain America, Brave New World, into something more than a franchise placeholder. He resists the temptation to lean solely on nostalgia, though echoes of Silvestri's score and Steve Rogers' legacy are present. Instead, he insists on building a film that is about the present, about fragility, division, resilience, and the courage to redefine symbols. His choices reflect a filmmaker who understands that the most enduring superhero stories are not about invincibility, but about humanity navigating impossible weight. Through visual contrast, tonal restraint, political immediacy, and a commitment to authentic representation, Onah carves out a vision that feels both Marvel and uniquely his own. The result is a film that may not dazzle with constant spectacle but lingers with depth, a story told through symbols, silences, and humanity. His direction ensures that Brave New World is not only about what happens to S.H.I.E.L.D., but about what the S.H.I.E.L.D., and those who carry it, mean to a world still searching for unity. Sound is often the invisible thread that ties image and emotion together, and in Captain America, Brave New World, the score and sound design become essential tools for deepening the film's themes. Music here does not simply decorate scenes. It interprets them, guiding the audience's perception of fragility, resilience, and ideological conflict. The score, blending echoes of the Marvel musical tradition with new motifs tailored to Sam Wilson's Captain America, ensures that the auditory identity of the film is both familiar and freshly resonant. At the heart of the soundtrack lies a reimagined Captain America theme. Alan Silvestri's iconic march, once the definitive sound of Steve Rogers, returns in fragments, never fully intact, but always recognizable. In moments when Sam steps into his role, a few bars surface, rearranged into softer tones or played in minor keys. This choice makes the theme feel both continuous and unsettled, reminding audiences that while the mantle is inherited, it is not identical. Sam's Captain America cannot simply echo Steve. He must transform the music into something his own. Gradually, a new motif emerges, woven from strings, percussion, and brass, soaring most vividly during flight sequences. This motif suggests openness, aspiration, and adaptation, signaling that Sam's story is about building a legacy, not living in the shadow of one. The leader's presence brings a contrasting soundscape, marked by dissonant and unsettling textures. Rather than heavy villainous brass or thunderous percussion, his theme leans into subtle distortions, electronic pulses, atonal strings, whispered voices layered in the background. These auditory cues mirror his intellectual dominance, creating unease without overt aggression. The soundscape around him feels suffocating, as if information itself has become noise. This approach makes his influence auditory as well as visual, transforming him into a villain whose power is felt even in silence. Ross's world, by contrast, is scored with rigid martial tones. Military drums, tight brass lines, and precise rhythms accompany his speeches and appearances. His musical signature conveys authority and order, but with an edge of sterility. Where Sam's music soars and breathes, Ross's music marches and constrains. The juxtaposition between these soundscapes mirrors the ideological clash at the center of the film: fluidity versus rigidity, freedom versus control. The action sequences are infused with layered sound design that ensures clarity without chaos. The clang of the shield as it ricochets reverberates with weight, a reminder of both its indestructibility and symbolic heft. Sam's wings slice through air with sharp, tactile rush, amplifying speed and agility. Explosions are present, but Onah and his sound team favor precision over excess, ensuring that the rhythm of combat is not lost in overwhelming noise. Particularly in aerial battles, the interplay between silence and sudden bursts of sound mimics the sensation of movement, a moment of quiet glide followed by the thunderous impact of collision. Silence itself is deployed as a powerful musical element. In several key moments, particularly when Sam contemplates a shield or delivers words conviction. The score recedes entirely. The absence of sound draws attention to the gravity of the moment, forcing the audience to engage directly with Sam's humanity. In a world where Marvel films often rely on continuous background scoring, these silences feel almost radical. They embody the fragility that defines a film, reminding us that strength is often found in quiet resilience. The soundtrack also incorporates subtle cultural inflections that expand Sam's identity beyond Steve Rogers' legacy. Percussive rhythms inspired by African and African-American musical traditions surface at key points, blended seamlessly with orchestral elements. These touches are not overt but intentional, weaving Sam's heritage into the larger fabric of Captain America's soundscape. This auditory layering reflects the film's thematic layering. Tradition meeting reinvention, the old merging with the new. Flight sequences are where the music truly lifts. Sweeping strings and soaring brass accompany Sam's arcs through the sky, creating a visceral sense of liberation. These moments are not scored as pure spectacle, but as affirmations of perspective and possibility. The music here mirrors the visuals of open sky, evoking both exhilaration and vulnerability. The sound swells as Sam ascends, then dips into quieter tones as he steadies himself, mirroring the rhythm of flight itself. Through this, the score transforms flight into more than action. It becomes a metaphorical soundtrack for freedom. In contrast, ground-level combat is scored with tighter, percussive rhythms, emphasizing struggle and physical exertion. The editing often syncs impacts to beats, creating a sense of rhythm that ties violence to music. Yet these beats are irregular, jagged, reflecting Sam's fragility compared to Steve Rogers' relentless rhythm. The music does not smooth over Sam's humanity but amplifies it, making his victories feel all the more earned. The closing moments of the film are perhaps the most emotionally potent in terms of music. As Sam walks forward, battered but resolute, the score blends fragments of Silvestri's original theme with the new motif that has carried him through the film. The two melodies overlap, intertwine, and finally merge, creating a symbolic handoff in sound. It is not Steve's music or Sam's alone, but shared continuum, affirming that the legacy of Captain America is not a fixed anthem, but a living, evolving harmony. What emerges from the soundtrack and sound design is a film that communicates as much through ear as through eye. Sam's fragility is heard in softened motifs and silences. The leader's menace is carried through dissonance and distortion. Ross's authority is announced by rigid rhythms. Together, they create an auditory world that mirrors the ideological battlefield. Music and sound do not merely accompany the story. They embody it, shaping how audiences feel the weight of legacy, the tension of politics, and the hope of renewal. In the end, Captain America, Brave New World reminds us that sound is not background but foreground, a central player in the narrative. The score's blending of past and present, its embrace of silence as much as sound, and its symbolic motifs ensure that the film's message resonates long after the final note fades. Just as Sam redefines the shield, the soundtrack redefines the sound of Captain America, carrying the past forward while carving space for a new, fragile, and courageous identity. The heartbeat of a film often lies not in its script or visuals, but in the way it moves, the rhythm of its pacing, and the choices of its editing. Captain America, Brave New World distinguishes itself by embracing a rhythm that is neither relentlessly fast nor indulgently slow. Instead, Julius Onah and his editorial team craft a balance that reflects the very fragility and duality of its themes. The pacing embodies a clash between chaos and order, tradition and reinvention, forcing the audience to live in the tension rather than escape it. From the opening sequence, the film establishes its deliberate rhythm. The prologue moves slowly, with measured shots of political chambers, international summits, and symbolic imagery of the shield resting unused. The editing here allows scenes to linger, forcing the audience to sit with silence and stillness. This measured opening contrasts sharply with the sudden eruption of action that follows. A mid-air skirmish where Sam deploys his wings and shield in a choreography of movement. The cut between political restraint and kinetic freedom creates a tonal rhythm that defines the entire film. Quiet dialogue punctuated by bursts of action, silence disrupted by impact. Onah's editing team favors continuity over disorientation, Fight sequences are cut with clarity, ensuring that the audience can follow Sam's movement and feel the weight of his physicality. Unlike some Marvel entries where action is edited into a blur, here each strike, parry, and deflection is allowed space. The shield's ricochet is often tracked across multiple frames, emphasizing not just spectacle but trajectory and consequence. Sam's aerial maneuvers are given wide, sweeping shots, allow his flight to feel expansive rather than claustrophobic. These choices reflect a directorial belief that action should serve narrative and editing should enhance, not obscure meaning. The pacing of dialogue-heavy scenes reveals equal care. Conversations between Ross and his advisors are cut with a rhythm that mirrors political negotiation. Long takes allow power to simmer, while sharp cuts to reaction shots capture tension and dissent. When Ross delivers speeches, the editing often lingers on the faces of the crowd, letting the weight of his words sink into silence before moving forward. This slower rhythm contrasts with the rapid cuts during scenes involving the leader, whose manipulations are scored visually with fragmented edits, flashing screens, and abrupt shifts. The editing style itself becomes a symbolic extension of character psychology. Ross's authority is steady and deliberate. The leader's chaos is fractured and fast. Sam's humanity moves somewhere between. The editors also use pacing to emphasize fragility. Key emotional moments: Sam contemplating the shield, Betty confronting her father, Joaquin Torres accepting his role, are allowed to breathe. The camera holds, the cut slow, silence stretches. These pauses serve as visual exclamation points, signaling that fragility is not weakness, but an essential part of the narrative's rhythm. Audiences are given space to reflect, to feel the burden carried by each character before the momentum resumes. Transitions are another area where the editing shines. Rather than cutting abruptly between political chambers and battlefield chaos, the film often uses symbolic imagery as bridges. A close-up of the shield in Ross's hand dissolves into Sam holding it mid-flight. A screen of fragmented data in the leader's layer cuts into fractured glass on a battlefield. These transitions maintain thematic continuity, ensuring that the pacing feels organic rather than mechanical. The rhythm of the film becomes cyclical, reminding viewers that all threads, politics, ideology, action, are intertwined. Importantly, the pacing resists the temptation to accelerate endlessly toward spectacle. Many superhero films build into climaxes that feel exhausting, but here Onah crafts a rhythm that crescendos and decrescendos. The climax itself is not a single explosion of action, but a layered sequence, intercutting between Sam's battle with the leader's machinations, Ross's political maneuvers, and Betty's moral confrontation. The editing crosscuts between these threads with precision, creating simultaneity without confusion. The result is a climax that feels orchestral rather than chaotic, with each narrative strand rising and falling in harmony. The closing sequences once again slow the pacing, mirroring the deliberate rhythm of the beginning. The shield, battered and scarred, rests as Sam reflects on the journey. The editing here is minimalist, avoiding flashy cuts, focusing instead on stillness and silence. The rhythm circles back to fragility, closing the story not with overwhelming speed but with quiet endurance. This final choice underscores the film's refusal to equate victory with invulnerability. Instead, the editing teaches the audience that strength lies in pauses, fragility, and breath as much as in speed and force. Sound editing also plays a vital role in shaping rhythm. The clang of the shield is given sonic space, often isolated in the mix, so its resonance lingers between cuts. Silence is stretched intentionally, creating tension in moments where audiences might expect music. These auditory choices align with visual pacing, ensuring that the rhythm of the film is felt in ear and eye alike. Altogether, the pacing and editing of Captain America: Brave New World reflect a director and editorial team willing to defy formula. They reject relentless velocity, instead embracing rhythm as storytelling. Each cut serves not just motion but meaning. Every pause communicates fragility. Every transition ties politics to action, symbol to spectacle. The result is a film whose pacing is not invisible but expressive, carrying the heartbeat of its themes in every rhythm of its movement. The visual identity of Captain America: Brave New World is inseparable from its themes of fragility, authority, and reinvention. The cinematography crafts a world that feels both intimate and vast, political and personal, marrying the grounded realism of a thriller with the scope of a superhero epic. Every frame is designed not only to tell a story, but to embody the contradictions at the heart of the film. The clash between freedom and control, between humanity and symbol, between fragility and strength. From its opening frames, the film establishes a visual style marked by contrasts. Political chambers are filmed with rigid symmetry, straight lines, harsh lighting, and tightly controlled compositions that emphasize authority but also sterility. These scenes are often drenched in colder palettes, blues, grays, and metallic tones that evoke detachment. By contrast, sequences involving Sam Wilson lean into warmer, more natural hues, with softer lighting that accentuates his humanity. Even in moments of conflict, the camera frames him with a sense of openness, capturing space and air rather than enclosure. This contrast becomes a visual metaphor. Ross represents order and confinement. Sam represents adaptability and breath. The use of light is particularly striking. Cinematographer Kramer Morgenthau employs naturalistic lighting whenever possible, bathing Sam in sunlight during flight sequences, illuminating his face in golden hues that evoke resilience and hope. Yet when he is indoors, particularly in government settings, the lighting shifts to harsher fluorescence that flatten his features, reflecting the weight of bureaucracy and expectation. The leader's scenes, in turn, are marked by shadows and distortion, with light filtered through fractured glass, screens, or green-tinted reflections that evoke corruption and manipulation. This layering of light and shadow makes the visual world feel ideologically charged. Brightness for openness, cold sterility for control, fractured green for corruption. Framing plays an equally important role in conveying meaning. Sam is often framed in medium shots, allowing us to see his body language as much as his expressions. The camera lingers on the way he holds his shield, the slight tremor in his hands, the effort in his stance. These frames highlight his fragility, refusing to mythologize him into an untouchable icon. Conversely, Ross is frequently framed from low angles, giving him visual dominance, yet these shots also expose his age and weariness, undercutting authority with mortality. The leader's framing is the most unsettling, often close-ups that cut off parts of his face or distort perspective, forcing the audience into discomfort. His presence feels invasive, visually embodying his ability to manipulate perception. Action sequences are shot with remarkable clarity. Morgenthau and Onah resist the temptation of shaky cam chaos, instead opting for wide shots that emphasize geography and coherence. When Sam soars through the sky, the camera follows with sweeping movements, allowing the audience to feel the openness of air and the vulnerability of exposure. Each movement is tracked. Every trajectory of the shield is visible, making action not just spectacle but narrative. In ground combat, handheld shots are used sparingly to emphasize immediacy, but they never overwhelm the clarity of choreography. This balance ensures that the cinematography remains immersive without losing coherence. Color grading reinforces thematic motifs. The palette leans into muted realism, avoiding the glossy sheen of earlier Marvel entries. Battlefields are dusted in earthy browns and grays. Political spaces glow with sterile whites and blues, and personal moments with Sam are tinged with warmth. Green becomes a recurring color around the leader, not only in his physical transformation, but in the screens, labs, and distorted lighting that surround him. This recurring use of color creates subconscious associations: warmth with humanity, sterility with control, green with corruption. By the film's climax, when these worlds collide, the blending of palettes creates visual tension, reinforcing narrative stakes. Camera movement is another subtle but vital element. Sam's flight scenes are filmed with fluid, gliding motions, the camera almost dancing alongside him, making audiences feel the exhilaration of freedom. In contrast, Ross's scenes are filmed with static or restrained tracking shots, reflecting his rigidity. The leader's presence often warps the camera's rhythm. Sudden zooms, fractured angles, or cuts that disorient. This interplay of movement becomes its own visual language, mapping ideology onto camera style. Depth of field is employed to guide focus toward meaning. In crowded political spaces, Ross is often shot with shallow focus, blurring those around him and emphasizing isolation despite his authority. Sam, conversely, is frequently captured with deeper focus, situating him within environments and communities, reminding us that his Captain America is not defined in isolation, but in relation to others. These choices enrich the film's visual philosophy, aligning cinematography with character identity. Perhaps the most evocative sequences are those of fragility, moments where the shield, once a symbol of invincibility, is shown scarred, dented, imperfect. The cinematography lingers on these imperfections, capturing light glinting off scratches, holding still on the weight of a shield resting in tired hands. These images communicate that legacy is not about perfection, but endurance. The choice to focus on imperfection visually embodies the film's central theme. The climax epitomizes the film's visual style. Sam's final confrontation unfolds in a setting where all palettes converge. Sterile blues of military technology, earthy tones of battle, fractured green of the leader's influence. The cinematography shifts between sweeping aerial shots and intimate close-ups, balancing spectacle with humanity. Light flickers between warmth and cold, shadow and illumination, until the final image of Sam, battered but standing, is bathed in a dawn glow. This deliberate use of visual language ensures that the resolution feels not only narratively satisfying, but symbolically potent. In its cinematography and visual style, Captain America, Brave New World asserts itself as both a Marvel film and something more. It embraces the grandeur of superhero spectacle, but tempers it with the intimacy of a political drama and the nuance of a character study. The visual world reflects fragility, authority, humanity, and corruption, weaving theme into every frame. By resisting over-stylization and focusing on clarity, contrast, and symbolism, the film crafts an identity that lingers in memory long after the final shot. At its heart, Captain America, Brave New World is more than a superhero spectacle. It is a meditation on legacy, fragility, political power, and the contested meaning of symbols in an unstable world. Through its characters, conflict, and imagery, the film transforms Marvel's familiar tropes into a canvas for broader cultural, philosophical, and symbolic exploration. Its themes resonate beyond the screen, echoing into our own fractured societies, where debates over leadership, unity, and identity are as pressing as they are in the fictional Marvel universe. The most immediate theme is that of legacy. The shield itself embodies this question. What does it mean to inherit a symbol that was once carried by someone else? For Steve Rogers, the shield was an extension of his body, amplified by his super soldier strength. For Sam Wilson, the shield is not natural, not effortless. Every time he lifts it, every time he throws it, the audience feels the exertion. This fragility is deliberate. It reframes Captain America not as an untouchable figure of myth, but as a human carrying an impossible weight. The shield becomes a metaphor for inheritance itself. Heavy, scarred, imperfect, yet enduring. Sam's struggle is not about living up to Steve, but about redefining what the shield means in his own hands. Closely tied to this is the theme of representation. Sam's identity as a black man in America is not an incidental detail, but a core part of the narrative. The film does not reduce him to a token figure, but highlights the difficulty of being both symbol and individual in a divided world. The shield, once an uncomplicated emblem of patriotism, becomes contested territory. Some view Sam's Captain America as illegitimate, others as overdue progress, others as an uncomfortable disruption of tradition. The cinematography lingers on faces and crowds, supporters, skeptics, opponents, reminding us that symbols acquire meaning not in isolation, but through the eyes of those who interpret them. Sam's journey embodies the struggle of anyone who steps into an inherited role, the need to honor history while refusing to be consumed by it. Another central theme is fragility. Unlike Steve Rogers, Sam does not possess superhuman resilience. He bleeds, stumbles, tires. His victories are not inevitable, but hard-earned. By emphasizing his vulnerability, the film rejects the idea that strength is defined by invulnerability. Instead, it proposes that true strength lies in the ability to endure fragility without surrendering to it. This theme resonates through the shield's imperfections, the pauses in silence, the lingering shots of exhaustion. The film insists that fragility is not weakness, but humanity, and that humanity itself is the foundation of heroism. The political dimension of the film introduces the theme of authority versus freedom. Ross, with his militaristic worldview, represents the desire for order at any cost. His rigid framing and martial music convey the allure of stability, even if it requires authoritarian control. The leader, conversely, represents the chaos of unrestrained intellect, manipulation, and ideological distortion. Sam stands between these extremes, embodying a fragile balance, refusing to accept authoritarian control, yet wary of chaos disguised as liberation. The clash of these figures mirrors real-world debates over governance, where the promise of safety often comes into conflict with the preservation of freedom. Symbolism permeates the film's visual language. The shield is the most obvious, a scarred icon of endurance. Its dents and scratches become a record of struggle, a reminder that symbols are not pristine, but living objects marked by history. The wings Sam carries are another symbol, representing perspective and adaptability. Where the shield anchors him to legacy, the wings allow him to transcend it, to literally and figuratively rise above confinement. Together, they represent the balance between inheritance and reinvention. The leader's symbolism lies in distortion. His green hue and fractured imagery evoke corruption, not only of body, but of truth itself. His reliance on information, data, and manipulation symbolizes the fragility of perception in a world inundated with conflicting narratives. He becomes less a man and more a metaphor for the dangers of intellect divorced from morality, knowledge without conscience. His very presence is a warning. Brilliance can corrode just as surely as brute power. Ross symbolizes another danger, the seduction of order. His rigid framing and martial imagery embody the appeal of stability, but the sterility of his world reveals the cost. His authority is not organic but imposed, a hollow order that demands compliance rather than inspiring trust. Together, Ross and the leader represent two extremes, authoritarianism and chaos, with Sam positioned as the fragile yet resilient middle path. The film also engages with themes of unity and division. Crowds are depicted not as monolithic masses, but as fragmented groups with conflicting reactions to Sam's Captain America. Some cheer, others doubt, others sneer. This visual diversity reminds us that symbols never unite everyone. They always divide as well. The challenge is not to erase division, but to endure it, to carry forward even when approval is incomplete. This theme resonates deeply with our world, where leaders are rarely universally embraced, and where the meaning of national symbols is hotly contested. Silence emerges as another symbolic element. The pauses where music recedes, the moments when Sam reflects in solitude, the absence of quips during heavy exchanges. All of these silences symbolize fragility and gravity. They remind the audience that power is not always loud, that leadership often requires stillness, reflection, and restraint. The leader fills space with distortion and noise. Ross fills it with rigid authority. But Sam allows silence to exist. His acceptance of silence becomes symbolic of his leadership style, open, thoughtful, and unafraid of vulnerability. Even color functions symbolically. Warm tones accompany Sam's moments of humanity. Sterile blues define Ross's authority. Fractured greens mark the leader's corruption. By weaving these palettes into narrative meaning, the film ensures that color is not decorative but interpretive. Each hue becomes shorthand for ideology, guiding the audience's subconscious response. Ultimately, the film's deepest theme is the redefinition of Captain America. Steve Rogers embodied idealized strength, superhuman, incorruptible, mythic. Sam Wilson embodies fragile resilience, human, imperfect, enduring. This thematic shift reflects a cultural shift as well. Audiences no longer seek invincible icons, but relatable figures who navigate fragility with courage. The shield does not symbolize perfection, but perseverance. Captain America, in Sam's hands, becomes not a myth of invincibility, but a story of humanity's fragile yet enduring hope. In this way, Brave New World functions as both a continuation and a transformation of Marvel's mythology. It honors legacy while reframing it, acknowledging fragility as the core of resilience, and insisting that representation is not ornamental but essential. Its symbols, shield, wings, silence, color, become tools for exploring questions of identity, authority, and endurance. The film's title itself is symbolic, Brave New World. It evokes the uncertainty of the present and the courage required to navigate it. It is not a promise of utopia, but an acknowledgement of fragility, a recognition that bravery is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to face it. In this sense, the title encapsulates the film's themes: fragility, legacy, humanity, and hope. By weaving these layers of meaning into its narrative and imagery, Captain America, Brave New World transcends the boundaries of genre. It becomes not just another Marvel film, but a cultural text, a reflection of our anxieties and aspirations. Its themes and symbols linger long after the credits roll, challenging audiences to reflect on their own fragile inheritances, contested symbols, and brave new worlds. Captain America, Brave New World emerges not simply as another chapter in Marvel's expanding saga, but as a work that redefines what it means to be a superhero film. At its core, it is not about spectacle or invincibility, but about fragility, endurance, and the evolving meaning of symbols in a fractured world. Julius, Onah, and his team deliver a film that resonates as much in silence as in action, in the scar dent of shield as much as in the soaring flight of wings. Sam Wilson's journey embodies the film's central message. Legacy is not about perfect replication, but about transformation. The shield he carries is never weightless, never effortless, and that difficulty is the point. Each struggle reminds audiences that true heroism lies not in superhuman strength, but in human resilience. By refusing to mythologize Sam into an untouchable figure, the film grounds Captain America in humanity, reminding us that leadership is fragile, contested, and deeply human. The political dimensions deepen this narrative, situating Sam between the rigid order of Ross and the chaotic manipulation of the leader. These figures serve as mirrors of the world's contemporary anxieties, the temptation of authoritarian control on one side and the destabilization of truth on the other. Sam's fragile balance between them reflects the challenges of leadership in any age: how to protect without controlling, how to inspire without deceiving. The film becomes a mirror for our own political landscape, asking what it means to carry symbols in a divided world. Cinematography, sound, and editing reinforce these ideas with remarkable coherence. The warm light on Sam's face, the distorted green glow of the leader, the rigid symmetry of Ross's world. Each visual choice transforms theme into texture. The soundtrack, blending fragments of Silvestri's iconic score with new motifs, reminds us that legacy is never erased but reshaped. Editing creates rhythm not through relentless speed but through deliberate pauses, allowing fragility to resonate as powerfully as impact. The film's artistry lies in how seamlessly its form and content align. Thematically, the film insists on rethinking strength. Steve Rogers embodied mythic invulnerability. Sam Wilson embodies fragile resilience. This shift is not a loss but a renewal, a recognition that in our own time, audiences need stories that affirm the value of imperfection. The battered shield, the silences, the faltering but persistent steps forward, these become the film's true emblems. They tell us that endurance is not about never falling, but about rising again and again, scarred but unbroken. The symbolism of wings and shield crystallizes this redefinition. The shield anchors Sam to history, reminding him of the weight of legacy. The wings allow him to transcend it, to see from new heights and perspectives. Together, they embody the balance between inheritance and reinvention. Sam is not Steve, nor does he try to be. He becomes something else, not an imitation of the past, but a fragile, courageous vision of the future. By the time the film closes, audiences are left with an image that lingers. Sam, weary but resolute, standing in the dawn light, shield scarred, wings folded, face illuminated not by triumph but by endurance. This final frame distills the entire journey. Victory is not about perfection, but persistence. Captain America, in this new world, is not a myth of untouchable strength, but a story of fragile resilience. Captain America, Brave New World, thus succeeds in doing something rare within the Marvel canon. It grows beyond the spectacle of superhero storytelling to become a meditation on identity, politics, and humanity. It redefines a symbol without erasing its past, insists on fragility as a source of strength, and offers audiences a hero who reflects not myth but reality. In Sam Wilson's Captain America, we find not an escape from the complexities of our world, but a reflection of them, and in that reflection, a fragile but enduring hope.